She was supposed to be the prey, just another helpless human lost in the jungle. But they had no idea who they were hunting. Deep in the unforgiving wilderness, surrounded by towering trees and the whispers of unseen predators, a lone woman fights for survival. A brutal alien creature, built for the hunt, stalks her every move. It sees her as nothing more than a weak, fragile target. But it made a mistake, because this woman wasn't just lost. She wasn't just running. She was trained to fight, to kill. And tonight, in the depths of the jungle, the real predator isn't the monster in the shadows. It's her. The hunt begins now. The thick, humid air of the jungle wrapped around Sophia like a suffocating cloak. Every breath she took was laced with the scent of damp earth, blooming flowers, and the distant rot of something long forgotten. The rustling canopy above filtered the fading light into flickering golden shards, dancing against the endless green abyss stretching around her. Sophia had been trained for this. At least that's what she told herself. She was a student, yes, but not the kind anyone would expect. Beneath her striking appearance, long, toned legs, a sharp, piercing gaze, and an effortless allure that turned heads, was a relentless fighter. A woman forged through sweat, discipline, and an unyielding hunger for victory. The survival course was supposed to be straightforward. A week of tactical training, deep in the jungle, pushing recruits to their absolute limits. Navigation, resourcefulness, combat readiness, each skill honed to razor-sharp precision. But something had gone horribly wrong. She had wandered too far, or something had led her away. Now she was alone. Her radio crackled with static, utterly useless in the choking wilderness. No landmarks, no clear paths. Only an endless, unbroken sea of trees stretching in every direction. She clenched her jaw, gripping the knife strapped to her thigh. Fear wouldn't help her. She needed to think. That's when she felt it. A presence. The hairs on the back of her neck rose as an unnatural stillness settled over the jungle. The distant calls of birds ceased. The rustling of the leaves froze, as if the entire forest was holding its breath. Sophia's heart pounded against her ribs. She wasn't alone. She turned, every muscle in her body coiled like a spring, her eyes scanning the darkness between the towering trunks. Then, in the suffocating silence, something shifted. A silhouette, barely visible, crouched within the undergrowth. It wasn't human. She knew that instantly. The way it moved, predatory, calculating, as if testing her, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Sophia tightened her grip on the knife, adjusting her stance. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but she didn't run. She had been trained for this. The thing in the darkness exhaled, a low, guttural sound that sent ice crawling up her spine. Then, without warning, it surged forward. Sophia's body reacted before her mind could catch up. She rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding the swipe of something massive. A thick, jagged claw tore through the air, where her head had been just seconds ago. She landed in a crouch, breath sharp and controlled. The creature stepped into the light, its form monstrous, grotesque. Muscles coiled beneath thick, scaled flesh, its elongated limbs ending in razor-sharp talons. A mouth filled with jagged teeth twisted into something resembling a grin. It was toying with her, testing her. Sophia wiped a bead of sweat from her brow, her lips curling into a smirk. "All right, big guy," she murmured, tightening her grip on the blade. "Let's see what you got." The jungle held its breath. Then they lunged at each other. Kitimanko. Sophia's breath came in steady, controlled exhales as she locked eyes with the monstrous figure before her. Its yellow, slit-pupil eyes studied her with an intelligence that made her stomach tighten. This wasn't just some mindless beast. It was a hunter, and she was the prey. Number, not prey. She was a fighter. The creature lunged faster than she expected. Claws whistled through the air, slicing toward her throat. She ducked, feeling the wind of its strike graze past her skin. In one fluid motion, she twisted away and drove her knife toward its exposed ribcage. Metal met flesh. Or at least she thought it would. Instead, her blade barely scratched the thing's thick, armored hide. It let out a chittering snarl, more amused than pained, and lashed out with a massive arm. She had no time to dodge. The impact slammed into her side like a freight train, sending her flying backward. She crashed into the damp earth, pain exploding in her ribs as the taste of blood filled her mouth. Her head spun, the world blurring for a moment. Move! Get up! Now Sophia rolled just in time as the creature's foot came down where her skull had been, splitting the ground like a hammer. She scrambled to her feet, her grip tightening on the knife. Her weapon was useless. She needed something else. Her eyes flicked around the jungle, scanning for anything she could use. The creature wasn't attacking yet, just watching, circling, savoring the hunt. It enjoyed this. Big mistake. Sophia backed up slowly, leading it toward a tangled mass of vines and thick tree roots. Her mind worked fast, calculating angles, weight distribution, escape routes. She let her shoulders slump, let her breath come out ragged, feigning exhaustion. The creature took the bait. With a guttural hiss, it lunged again, its massive body bearing down on her. At the last second, she sidestepped, twisting her body as she grabbed a thick vine overhead and swung herself upward, narrowly avoiding its claws. The creature slammed into the roots, its momentum carrying it straight into the trap. A split second of hesitation. That's all she needed. Using the leverage from the vine, she twisted in the air and brought her boot down, hard, against the back of its skull. The impact sent it lurching forward, tangling in the thick undergrowth. Sophia didn't waste time. She sprinted, weaving between trees, ducking under branches, her muscles screaming in protest. She knew she hadn't killed it, not even close, but she had made her move, and in the hunt, sometimes that was all it took. The jungle pulsed with life around her, chirping insects, distant howls, the rustling of unseen creatures slithering through the underbrush. But the only sound that mattered was the near-silent movement behind her. It was hunting her. Sophia forced herself to keep her breathing steady, despite the raw ache in her ribs. She had no illusions. This wasn't over. She had bought herself time, nothing more. The thing was faster, stronger, and had armor tougher than her blade could pierce. She needed a plan. Her mind flicked through everything she'd been trained for. Survival tactics, close quarters combat, psychological warfare. If brute force wouldn't work, she had to outthink it. A soft click. Her blood went cold. The sound was almost imperceptible, but her instincts screamed at her. A trap? Number. The creature was testing her, deliberately making noise to gauge her reaction. She didn't move, didn't flinch. Seconds dragged into eternity. Then, another sound. From behind. Her grip on the knife tightened. If she turned, she was dead. If she ran, it would chase her down. She had to make it react. Slowly, she reached down, fingers brushing against the damp jungle floor. She grabbed a small stone and flicked it to the side. The soft impact against a tree sent birds fluttering in alarm. And then, the creature lunged at where it thought she was. Sophia pivoted, spinning behind it. Her knife slashed out, aiming for the exposed gap between its shoulder plates. It roared, this time in pain. Dark, viscous liquid oozed from the wound, steaming against the humid air. The creature staggered forward before turning its burning, hate-filled gaze on her. Sophia ran, not blindly, not out of fear. She had seen something in the undergrowth, a clearing. She pushed herself harder, ignoring the burning in her legs, ignoring the crashing footsteps behind her. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears as she burst through the trees. A cliff. Her stomach plummeted. No way forward, no way back. The sound of the creature's approach was deafening. She turned, chest heaving, eyes darting for anything she could use. Then she saw it. A tangle of vines. A memory flashed. Training drills. Rappelling. The feel of rope against her palms. She had one shot. The creature lunged. Sophia grabbed the vines and threw herself over the edge. The world spun as gravity yanked her down. The wind roared in her ears, her fingers burning as she slid, holding on with everything she had. Above, she caught a final glimpse of the predator. It stood at the edge, staring down, furious, but unwilling to follow. For the first time, Sophia felt a small, sharp smile tug at her lips. She wasn't just prey, she was the better hunter. Sophia's arms trembled as she gripped the vines, her descent slowing just enough before she landed in a crouch at the jungle floor below. Her hands stung, raw from the friction, but she had no time to dwell on the pain. Above, the creature snarled in frustration, its glowing eyes scanning the cliffside for another way down. Good. Let it watch. Let it realize that she wasn't just running anymore. She was thinking. The adrenaline coursing through her veins sharpened her focus. She had seen the way it moved. Powerful, yes, but arrogant. It had never been challenged before. It fought as if it had already won. She could use that. Sophia inhaled deeply, steadying her heartbeat. Then she did something no prey would ever do. She turned her back to the creature and walked away. Not ran. Walked. Let it wonder why. She moved swiftly through the dense foliage, her mind already piecing together what she needed. The jungle was alive, and she could use it. A predator wasn't just muscle and fangs, it was patience. It was intelligence. She was both. Her first priority was weapons. Her knife was good, but she needed more. She scavenged as she moved. Sharp stones, sturdy branches, twisted vines. Tools. Her second priority? Setting the trap. The jungle was not an empty battleground. It was her ally. The roots twisted like veins beneath the soil. The vines hung like silent sentinels from the trees. She found what she was looking for, a natural choke point between two massive boulders. The only way forward through the thick underbrush was this narrow gap. Perfect. She worked quickly, tying vines between the trees, setting crude spikes along the ground with sharpened sticks. A proper trap? Number. But enough to slow it down. Enough to give her an edge, a sharp snap in the distance. It was coming. She climbed into the trees, pressing her body against the thick branches, holding her breath. From above, she watched as the massive figure stalked into view, its glowing eyes scanning the jungle floor. It knew she was near. It just didn't know where. The creature stepped forward. The first trap sprang. A vine tightened around its foot, yanking it forward. It stumbled, slamming into the boulders, its roar shaking the trees. Then it stepped into the second trap. Sharpened wooden spikes drove into its shin, not enough to kill, but enough to wound. It snarled, wrenching itself free, but the damage was done. It was bleeding, slower. Sophia's grip tightened around her knife. This wasn't about escape anymore. This was her hunt now. Sophia steadied her breath, watching from above as the alien predator struggled through the crude trap she had laid. The jagged wooden spikes embedded in its shin had done their job. Its movements were slower now, no longer effortless. It wasn't invincible. She tightened her grip on the knife. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears, but her mind was clear. She had one shot. The jungle canopy swayed in the wind, the shadows shifting across the beast's dark, leathery skin. It growled low, scanning its surroundings, sensing the trap wasn't just misfortune. It knew she was hunting back. Sophia leapt. She fell fast and hard, twisting midair, using the momentum to drive the knife deep into its shoulder. The creature howled, the sound rattling through the trees. Its body jerked in violent spasms, but she held on, gripping its flesh as it thrashed, trying to throw her off. It wasn't used to pain. It wasn't used to being prey. She pulled the blade free and plunged it again, aiming lower, near the joint, where she had seen its muscles contract. Weaken it, limit its movement. The alien snarled, reaching up with its clawed hand. But Sophia was already moving. She pushed off its back and rolled across the jungle floor, the knife still slick with its dark, viscous blood. The creature staggered, its glowing eyes locked onto her, its chest rising and falling in ragged breaths. It felt pain. It felt weakness. And now it felt anger. The alien lunged. Sophia barely dodged in time, rolling to the side as its claws ripped through the dirt where she had just stood. It was faster than she expected, even with its wounds. She needed distance. She ran, but this time she wasn't fleeing. This time, she was leading it. Her path wasn't random. She had studied this jungle, every inch of it. She zigzagged between trees, over tangled roots, past thick undergrowth, funneling the creature where she wanted it. It chased her, blinded by rage, ignoring its wounds, its primal instincts demanding it finish this. Just a little further. She reached a clearing, sliding to a stop on the damp soil. She turned just in time to see the predator burst through the foliage, its massive frame silhouetted against the moonlight. It took one step forward, and the ground collapsed beneath it. The pit was deep, lined with sharpened wooden stakes. The creature barely managed to catch itself, grabbing onto the dirt walls with its powerful limbs. But it was stuck. Sophia stood over it, panting, her body slick with sweat and blood. She had it. For the first time since this nightmare began, she saw something in its eyes besides bloodlust. Doubt. It had underestimated her. A slow, wicked smile spread across Sophia's lips. Now, she would finish this. Sophia towered over the pit, her chest rising and falling as she stared at the trapped beast below. It should have been over, but the creature wasn't panicking. It wasn't even struggling. Its glowing eyes fixed on her. And then, it grinned. A chill crept down her spine. That wasn't fear. That was anticipation. The jungle around them went silent. Sophia's grip on her knife tightened. Then a low vibration rumbled through the ground beneath her. It wasn't coming from the predator in the pit. It was coming from the jungle. Her breath hitched. She wasn't the only one hunting tonight. A sharp, guttural cry echoed in the distance. Then another, and another. Sophia's stomach twisted. They weren't alone. The alien let out a slow, deep growl. It had never been alone. The realization hit her like a blow to the chest. She had only seen one. She had only wounded one. But the others had been watching. And now they were coming. The leaves rustled overhead. Shadows shifted in the trees. Eyes glowed from the darkness, circling, moving closer. Sophia had won a battle, but the war had just begun. Her instincts screamed at her to run. But she didn't. Instead, she did something no prey should ever do. She locked eyes with the beast in the pit, took a slow, deliberate step forward, and she grinned back. "You're not the only one who brought friends." The creature's grin vanished. A sharp whistle cut through the air, and the jungle erupted into chaos. From the shadows, the second wave of predators lunged. Sophia moved first. She dropped low, rolling just as a massive claw slashed through the space where she had stood. The force of the attack sent dirt and debris flying, but she didn't stop. Every movement was calculated. Every action had a purpose. She was outnumbered, but she wasn't outmatched. Not yet. The first creature landed hard, its claws gouging deep trenches into the earth. It was bigger than the first, stronger. Its eyes burned with a murderous glow. Sophia barely had time to react before the second beast descended from the trees above. She pivoted, using the momentum to flip backward, narrowly dodging as its tail cracked the ground like a whip. They weren't just attacking her. They were testing her, hunting her the way she had hunted one of their own. Her pulse pounded. She needed a weapon, something more than a knife. Her eyes flicked toward the pit, the alien she had wounded, the one who had underestimated her, the one who owed her a fight. Sophia made a choice. She ran straight for the pit. The creatures hesitated for a split second, confused, thrown off by the sudden shift in her movements. That hesitation was all she needed. She lunged forward, grabbed hold of one of the fallen spears from her trap, and she threw it, straight into the hand of the creature in the pit. The beast's golden eyes widened in shock. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then, understanding. A flicker of something primal, something deeper than instinct. They weren't allies, but in this moment, they had a common enemy. The beast roared. Then it launched itself from the pit. Sophia turned, gripping her knife tighter as the other two aliens charged. The fight wasn't over. But now she wasn't fighting alone. It, the jungle erupted into madness. Sophia barely had time to brace before everything turned into a blur of violence. The wounded predator she had freed collided with one of its own, the impact sending both creatures crashing into the undergrowth. Claws slashed, teeth snapped, and a deep, guttural roar ripped through the night. Sophia didn't wait. She spun, dodging as the second alien beast lunged for her throat. It was faster than the others, more calculated, its movements fluid and terrifyingly efficient. But so was she. She dropped low, feeling the rush of air as its claws swiped inches from her face. She could hear her heartbeat pounding in her ears, but she kept moving. This wasn't fear. This was instinct. She twisted, driving her knife upward, aiming for the exposed flesh beneath its jaw. But the alien was smart. It jerked back at the last second, avoiding the killing blow. Sophia cursed. It was learning. Her advantage was slipping. Then, from the corner of her eye, she saw something move. The wounded alien, the one she had freed, was winning its fight. The other beast let out a shriek as it was pinned, jaws clamping down on its throat. Thick, dark liquid splattered the ground. One down. Sophia turned just as her own opponent lunged again. But this time she didn't dodge. She met it head-on. A heartbeat before impact, she shifted her weight, redirecting the creature's momentum. It was bigger than her, but she was smarter. She used its own force against it, sending it straight into a sharpened, broken branch jutting from a fallen tree. The alien let out a choked snarl, then went still. Sophia stumbled back, chest heaving, eyes locked on its lifeless body. She didn't feel relief. Not yet, because there was one left. The final beast stood across from her, its golden eyes narrowed, its breathing ragged. It wasn't charging, it wasn't attacking, it was watching. Sophia realized what was happening. It had seen everything. It had watched her fight. It had seen her kill, and now it was deciding. For a long, excruciating moment, neither of them moved. Then the alien did something she never expected. It bowed its head. Sophia froze. The creature let out a low, rumbling growl, not a threat, but something else. Acknowledgement, a warrior's respect. And then, just like that, it turned and vanished into the jungle. Sophia didn't chase it. She let it go, because this wasn't her victory. This was a war of survival, and tonight, they had both survived. The jungle fell silent once more. Sophia exhaled, gripping the hilt of her knife tighter, staring at the darkness where the last creature had disappeared. She had won, but she knew deep down, this fight wasn't over. Sophia stood in the eerie silence of the jungle, her muscles trembling, her breath ragged. The battle had ended, but the night still felt alive, watching, waiting. Her body ached, bruises, cuts, exhaustion. But she was still standing. The alien she had spared had vanished into the darkness. She didn't know if or when she would see it again, but the message had been clear. It knew she was not prey. She adjusted her grip on her knife, scanning the trees. The jungle, once a hostile, unforgiving prison, now felt different. Not safer, but changed. A shadow shifted in the corner of her vision. Sophia tensed. Something was moving through the foliage, silent, deliberate. She raised her blade, but then a familiar set of golden eyes met hers. Her breath caught. The alien had returned, but it was not alone. Behind it, partially hidden in the jungle gloom, stood more of them. Not enemies, not attacking, just watching. Sophia's grip on her knife tightened, but she didn't move. She knew what this was, a test, a choice. The creature she had saved took a step closer, not aggressive, not threatening. Then it did something she never expected. It lowered its head, a sign of acknowledgement, a warrior's respect, and one by one, the others did the same. Sophia didn't blink. Her heart pounded, but she forced herself to stand her ground. Then slowly, she nodded back. The jungle had been a battleground. Now it was something else. She had come here as prey. She was leaving as something far more dangerous. The creatures melted back into the trees, vanishing without a sound. Sophia let out a slow breath, wiping the sweat from her brow. She was alone again. But now she understood. This jungle wasn't a trap. It was a proving ground. And she had just passed the test. She turned toward the distant lights of the base, knife still in hand. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. The end.